Great leadership isn't defined in the calm, it's revealed in the critical moment. The difference between reacting and responding can change an outcome, a relationship, or an entire culture. Come on, let's go ahead and talk about it today. Welcome back to Transformation Station, the podcast where leaders come to rise with clarity, lead with purpose, and transform from the inside out. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and today we're diving into one of the most powerful leadership skills there is. We're talking about knowing how to respond instead of reacting. Now, if this podcast inspires you, helps you lead with more clarity, or sparks transformation, will you help us today? Let me tell you how. I want to start by saying thank you. Because of you, we just hit 2,500 podcast downloads. Thank you to everyone who has listened, who has watched, who has contributed to building this leadership community. But guess what? We've only just begun. There's so much more. So I want to invite you right now. If you missed season 1, if you missed season 2, go ahead and hit the replay button. You can go on Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, any of your preferred podcast platforms. Get caught up and help us push forward and keep Transformation Station leadership community growing and thriving. And as a matter of fact, later on today, we have another episode with Dr. Naima Alantanji talking about leading on empty. You don't want to miss it. So right now, hit that subscribe, that follow, so you get the notification. All right, well, listen, today we're having a very important conversation that I'm really excited to talk about. And today I have a special guest with me. His name is Walter. Let me tell you a little bit about Walter. Walter is also known as the Dutch mentor. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in personal development and mentorship. And with a passion for empowering individuals, he shares insights on overcoming, cultivating a growth mindset, and unlocking one's full potential. Walter, I want to welcome you to Transformation Station. Welcome.
Listen, I cannot think of a better place to be, and thank you for the invitation. And boy, I love your energy.
Oh, man, we're excited to have you today. So, this conversation that you and I are about to engage in, I believe that for leaders, this is an evergreen classic conversation because all leaders find themselves in the tension of, do I respond or do I react? And to me, the conversation that we're about to have, it's an invitation to slow down. It's an invitation to be intentional. So I want to start off by asking you this question. Walter, what's the core difference between responding and reacting, especially in the context of leadership? Why does it matter? What's the core difference?
Well, I'm going to give you a simple equation to keep in mind so everybody can relate back to that. And that is E plus R equals O. So this is a fact in life. Events are going to happen, no matter at home or at work. That's inevitable. You have two choices. You can react to those events or you can respond to those events. And out of either your reaction or your response, there's going to be an outcome. Now, we also know that those who react to an event often are not fully satisfied with the outcome. Now, we have to remember that we have two distinctive parts of our brain. We have our upper brain and we have our lower brain. Our lower brain is programmed to react, to fight for flight, the immediacy of doing things without really putting much thought into it. Now, this is a bit tricky here. As leaders, we tend to react to things, or we tend to put band-aids on problems, and they only reoccur, or they never really fully satisfy, or in other words, we don't get the outcomes that we desire. So what that really requires is for us to learn to pause even momentarily. Now, I'll tell you the difference. As a paramedic for over 30 years, as a flight medic, I've been in many critical situations where people literally die in front of me or their heart stop in front of me. And I need to react to that. Now, even that reacting is really responding, because in the nanosecond, I need to make all kinds of analysis in my brain. What can I do? How can I do it? And how can I have the best possible outcome? And it starts with patient safety and in mind. Now, if you translate that to leadership, it is pretty rare that we need to make a moment in the moment decision, like, do I need to put my gloves on before, and do I use a mask to do mouth to mouth? Often we have time to think, but we have this innate behavior that we want to give the answer the second somebody is asking us something to do. And that's where the difference needs to come in. So we need to raise self-awareness. So how can you raise self-awareness? Well, simple. If the next conversation you have, if you're already formulating a response in your brain, before the person is even done speaking, you're most likely not really listening. You're not really processing, and likely whatever your response is self-directing rather than truly answering the question itself. If that is your normal behavior, by the way, that's the majority of people function like that, then you're also likely to react to things in the same way. Again, the more you become self-aware around that, the more likely it is that you can convert that reacting into a responding type of process. And I'll leave it at that, because we can probably talk about this for 8 hours straight, but you have to think about that.
Yeah, this is really great, right? So here in Transformation Station, we always give our listeners and viewers an opportunity to pause and reflect. And I think that Walter has started us off with a great place to pause and reflect, right? He's talking to us about the difference between reacting and responding. And I want to invite every listener and viewer right now, ask yourself, do you what's your tendency as far as your mode of operation, right? Walter talked to us about listening to respond, or listening with the intentionality of wanting to really gain awareness. Which one is your mode of operation? Which one really authentically shares who you really are? Some of us are operating in reacting mode, but we really want to respond. And you're going to get an invitation all through this podcast episode to navigate on how to change some of our behavior. So if I hear you correctly, reacting is immediate, it's emotional, oftentimes unconscious, right? It just happens, right? And responding is intentional, grounded, and conscious. If I hear you correctly, it's a choice.
It is a choice. It's actually a behavior. Right, and it is the behavior that very few people actually are innate to. Right, it is not normal. Most people are very reactive. Why is that? Because just think about the animals. Right, when a calf is born in the wild, they walk within seconds because they have to for survival piece. So our fight for flight center wants to take over when there's a certain level of nervousness or excitement or uncertainty. And they blurt out answers without really thinking about what is said. So again, it's the behavioral capacity that we need to build. It's no different than a muscle. A, we need to raise awareness. B, now we need to actually take appropriate actions in order to be able to learn to respond versus reacting. And the key to that is to build what we call these atomic habits, right? To really change the way you do things. Raise awareness, catch yourself in the act reacting, and then correcting that. And I say that you should make that a daily assessment, a daily measure for yourself. That if this is the way you lead, that you want to say on the end of the day, did I today react or did I today respond? And usually, the red, yes, I reacted more than responding. It's a red. I did decent. It's a yellow. And I did great. It is a green. But it is only if you do this for an extended period of time, like 90 to 120 days, that you can become consistently great at responding versus reacting and creating a new normal for yourself. But it's like EQ, it's like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it is
Mm.
likely to weaken over time. So beware of that.
I love that. I love that. To bring it home practical for leaders, reacting sounds like fix it now, right? Responding sounds like let's pause for clarity. Right. So, leaders, you're watching, you're listening as Walter is sharing with us, and he's giving us, the definitions. He's helping us to understand the psychology. He's also giving us a practical lens by which we can look at ourselves. We also want to give ourselves some practical examples so that as we continue to have this conversation, we're very clear about what we're talking about. So, I want to ask you this question, right? You kind of mentioned it earlier about upper brain thinking. What is upper brain thinking?
Well, we can just we don't need to go to the neuroscience or the chemistry of the brain itself, but we have two pieces of the brain where that lower brain is more reactive, while the other part allows us to process thoughts. And that's really about slowing the world down around you a little bit. So we have to keep it very simple, right? It is almost like a binary choice. I just had a great conversation not too long ago with somebody. Our brain actually wants to find a solution or a hook within 9 seconds. And if we can't find it, we change the way we process information, and often it leads to reacting versus responding itself. So again, it comes down that we want to stay upper brain. We want to be thoughtful in every action that we take. That is in the conversations we have. It is the actions that we take. It is how we go on the Gemba and interact with other people. So the goal for oneself is to make it an exercise on a daily basis, is to remain upper brain and don't, be reactive in anything that you do, including when you're driving to work and you're beeping your horn, which is lower brain, reactive, while saying, maybe why is the person in such a rush? Right? That's collective. Is it maybe they have an emergency? So maybe I need to be more empathetic to that. Again, the upper brain allows us to process information and be a better leader. Why? Because it helps build trust, and it helps build understanding, and it helps build curiosity. It helps being more innovative and creative. It allows you to empower other people rather than always have to make a decision yourself.
Wow. Transformation Station community, I'm inviting you right now to go ahead in the comments. Tell us what is resonating with you. Put your thoughts in there, because all of us as leaders, again, we all wrestle with the tension between responding and reacting, reacting and responding. This is a master class right now, right? So if I hear you correctly, and please correct me, because if I have this wrong, then we can go back and dive a little deeper, because I want to make sure everybody gets this. So upper brain, that's responding. I'm taking the time to think things through, asking some thoughtful questions. Lower brain, I'm reacting. I'm letting my emotions guide. I'm just jumping in without using the upper brain to really think about things. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I just want to be very thoughtful about that, because sometimes people say, well, responding, let me think about it. That takes hours. That's not true. I go back to the example I used earlier. Right? If somebody drops in front of me and I need to do CPR, I'm still required to respond to that in seconds. But I need to assess a few things, right? So responding can be done quickly as well, but there's always some level of thought into that. While reacting is just done without much of any thought. And that is the problem. That's really the key difference. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to the people that you lead, that you put a little bit of thought into that. Now, one of the innate inabilities of most people is to say, "Oh, I don't know."
Yep.
Because they have this innate ability, innate need. Well, I need to have the answers all. I'm the leader. I'm the smartest person in the room. Well, that is not true. It doesn't need to be true, right? The collective is the smartest people in the room. It is really powerful for leaders to say, instead to react to something, to say, I don't know. Let me think about this. Let me talk to a few people, and let me get back to you tomorrow morning. That's upper brain thinking, right? Rather than saying something or promising something that you have no intention of following through. And remember that the equation of high performance is the function of trust and engagement.
Right,
If
sir.
you react over and over and over and you don't follow through, or it's found out later that there is no truth to that, or it's only a half a truth, well, that erodes trust.
Yes.
And as a
Mm-hmm.
leader, if there's no trust, forget about anything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only non-negotiable variable that a part of leadership.
1000%. So let me ask you this. Can you share a time when you or a leader you worked with chose to respond instead of react? And what impact did that have on the outcome?
Yeah, so the best leaders that I have worked for, even some very smart people, they tend to ask clarifying questions. When you give them something, instead of being able to react to that, in other words, give me they will ask me questions to develop a deeper understanding of what it is that I'm trying to articulate. And often in problem solving, in any scenario, that can be an ambulatory care, it can be hospital, IT, banking, doesn't make a difference. We need to learn that the first thought that we have is rarely the best thought. But how do I get to that second or third rendition where
Mhm.
we do continuous improvement, where often whatever it is that we do, it is that leader that allows that person to be innovative, to be creative, to give them the empowerment, to give them the time, ask clarifying questions rather than being judgmental, that really brings the best out of the people that they lead. And again,
Mhm.
on the end of the day, it is not, I just spoke to somebody earlier, is that I don't need to be the smartest person in the room,
Right.
right? I need to unlock the intelligence of the
Yes.
collective to get the best possible outcomes. And that's a
Yes.
really good example of reacting. I got to do it myself. I got to do it now versus taking the time to look at the
Mhm.
collective and really say, this is the right way to go forward. What do you
Mhm.
think?
Wow, this is so rich. What a master class to everybody. I want to invite all of us because I'm going to go back and watch this on the replay. Really take this seriously, hone and listen to what Walter is sharing with us. And again, what's resonating with you? What do you see as being practical and relevant for enhancing, growing your leadership style, and how you interact with your team? So, Walter, why do so many leaders default to reacting under pressure? And what practices can help us to shift that reflects into a more intentional response?
Where somewhere along the way, somebody told them or they observed that they need to have all the answers. And it
I
is
see.
pride and ego
Mm,
or imposter syndrome or
mm,
leading from low area of low confidence that they tend to want to overcome that by
I see.
being the loudest voice
Mm,
in the room. And that is rarely the right approach, right?
mm,
So especially today, and remember that we have to make adjustments to the people that we serve. And as we get older, the Gen X's get older, we have to
mhm,
now serve and lead the Gen Y, Z, millennials. And they think differently from how we think. So we better adjust the way. So going from a direct and control or authoritarian style, do as I say, not as I do, that
mhm.
no longer works.
No, it
Right?
doesn't.
Today, it is far more important that the leader in an organization flattens the hierarchy to the best ability.
Mhm,
Really is the visionary, so people get to really understand where we are heading, what it is, and why we should buy into this, and
mhm,
then set the stage for people to have real dialogue around that.
mhm.
What I refer to as civil discord, and
Right.
out of that there comes a common union that we all can come to a unified approach while
Mm,
really remaining, teachable. That
mhm,
is what leaders of today need to do, and that's more the servant type leadership or the 365 or situational type leadership. Those are
mhm,
the folks who really master that. They are
mhm.
the ones who lead with the upper brain.
I love that. And so, what I'm thinking as you're talking is that on a practical level, what can we do to change our reflex? From what I heard you say earlier, this thought came to me. Build awareness of your triggers, right? You can't
Mm-hmm.
interrupt what you don't recognize. So if you notice that in your leadership style, you tend to react, right, as opposed to respond, but you want to correct it, well, allow yourself to stop and really ask some questions and allow yourself to be aware with no judgment, but be aware of what your triggers are, right? So that way you can recognize when that trigger gets flared and you can make a conscious choice and decision. I'm not going to react. I'm going to pause. I'm going to respond. Or, like Walter gave us the example earlier, I'm going to ask a thoughtful question. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, listen, it comes down to a simple exercise that everybody can do. Everybody who's listening can start it right now. And remember
Mhm,
that real change comes from taking action, right? So this is an action you can take for the next 2 weeks.
mhm,
Every day you want to look back and say, did I react to something? Or you can even do decision by decision.
mhm,
Write down if you reacted or responded. And if you reacted, answer the question, why is that? Try
mhm,
to understand that trigger you just spoke about on
mhm,
why are you reacting? Why are you not taking the time to process the information? And
mhm,
over a cumulative of 2 weeks, you can see the different types of scenarios on
mhm,
when you are reacting. And often there you will find a common link.
mhm.
And that could come out of insecurity, that could come out of pride and ego, that comes out of a sense of superiority. The key
Yes.
thing is for you to be able to try to develop that understanding of self.
Mhm,
Now, I will advocate that every single person who is in leadership should
mhm.
have a confidant, a coach, or a mentor like myself
Yes.
that they have these types of conversations with on a weekly basis. To become a
Yes.
highly effective leader, you don't do that alone,
No.
right? And I will tell you, by the way, women are much better at asking for that assistance than
Mm,
men. And I can
mm,
only contribute to the fact that women tend not to be egocentric
mm,
versus men are more likely to be locked into that
mm,
bravado, that egocentric behavior that I know it all. If I don't know it all, I'll pretend to know it all. And
mhm,
and that's where people need to learn to become vulnerable and say, you know what, if I really want to advance, if I really want to lead with cause, if I really
mm,
want to reach to my fullest potential, I
mhm.
need to be with somebody who can really dive into it and start understanding and helping identify where the triggers are. Try
Yes.
to have an understanding of often these comes things out of childhood or
Mm,
how you interact with mom and dad or
I
your
see.
cultural upbringing. How can we break that and then
Yes.
evolve out of that into developing new healthy habits and behaviors supported by behavioral capacity that people can buy into, people
Mhm.
want to be around, and that's how
Yes.
you build high performance teams for the future.
I love that. So you're leading me right into this next question because you talked earlier, you mentioned the word trust, right? So as you
Mhm.
just now have encouraged us as leaders to be vulnerable, right? Appropriately, be vulnerable, be open, be willing to collaborate, to journey with others, right? How can leaders, how should leaders build trust and engagement? How should we do that? You mentioned behavior earlier.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is so again. People should write down, right, and keep it right in front of them. Performance equals the function of trust multiplied by engagement. You
Mhm,
can have a highly engaged staff that's not, and there's no trust, is likely not going to be performance. If there's no trust, and engagement, all these things matter a lot. So where do we start? Hey, listen, we need to start at the beginning. And the beginning is that each leader needs to get to know the people that they lead. And I call that in my program, we love the people that we lead. We need to get to really genuinely understand the people that we lead. Now, if you're the executive leader, it's impossible to get to know all 2,000 people. But each, your direct reports, you need to build a partnership with. And that partnership requires you to develop a deeper understanding of the person's intrinsic values, meaning
mhm,
what makes them tick. Try to get to understand how they live, what their hobbies are, what are their goals and aspirations for self. And if
mhm,
we teach that down all the way to the front line itself, and we do more of that, the more likely, if we are connected, if we feel relatable, if we everybody understands we get up the same way out of bed every single morning, um, then that is something that brings people together. That starts building trust. Now
mhm,
that decisions are not being made in a vacuum, but rather through the collective, that
mhm,
builds engagement. The
mhm,
problem is, and again, the lack of behavioral capacity on the human being is
mhm,
that we go out and talk about this, we articulate this, we set these goals, and then we move on. Well, the
mhm,
problem is that people don't buy into the first time or the second time, or maybe
mhm,
even the third time. People don't change as quickly as we think they do. And
mm,
therefore, 70 to 80% of the things that we set out to do fall short or never happen because we never give it time
Mm.
enough to develop, right? And it is how we as leaders need to cultivate, need to, uh,
Mhm.
to support. We need to help people through their valley of despair, so that
Mhm.
the forming, storming, norming, performing philosophy takes time. If we
Mhm.
want to truly be in different organizations where the trust is high,
Yes.
engagement high, we need to do things from repetition over 90 to 120 days to create these new normals.
Yes. 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 1000%. Woo, this is super rich, like super, super rich. So, I want to, as we turn the corner here, I want to just kind of summarize what I've heard, right? And we can kind of talk through this a little bit. Earlier and throughout, I've kind of heard you say, as a leader, when we look at this from a practical lens, communicate transparently and often, right? Low information creates high anxiety. Many times when there's high anxiety, we tend to react. But if we're communicating transparently, there's that authenticity, and often that decreases anxiety and causes trust to grow. I also heard you say multiple times, listen to understand, not to reply. And then you said this earlier, when people feel heard, they feel valued. When they feel valued, they show up differently. Man, we want our team to show up in a way where they feel valued, where they have pride in the mission, where they feel like they can be a team, where there's shared responsibility on getting things completed. And so we want to invite you to listen to understand, not to reply. This is like a totally different, but I had a mentor recently who said to me, so many times leaders feel like just because they may be in a pressure filled situation that they have to jump into the pressure and then respond based on the pressure. But she said many times when there are pressure filled situations, take a pause.
Mm-hmm.
The email comes through, you don't have to answer that email in 5 minutes unless the house is on fire. Like this super, you can read it, process it, think about it, respond in a half an hour, respond an hour later, especially if you are triggered while you're reading that email. That's a good key symbol. That's an opportunity right there for you to just pause. I'm triggered. I'm about to react through my emotions. Let me step back, process, think, ask what is true about this situation, what is needed in this moment, and for us to be able to move forward. And she said, what you will end up producing will be so much better, or the communication will be so much clearer because you had that pause. What do you think about that?
So I'll add one little trick to that, is that because we have this, again, this need to respond right away, to react right away. Write an email back. I've received your message. I'm
Mm,
processing the information. I'll get back to you in 24 hours, in
yeah.
5 days, whatever it is. Hold me accountable to coming back to you. Now you bought yourself time to think about it without having to pass, and you acknowledge the person that they send it, so they don't sit in limbo. Like, did anybody even read my email? It is, the funny thing is that, we all go to interviews, and then you write a little thank you note to the people who interviewed you, and then you don't hear back. It's like,
Mm,
where does this behavior come from? Again, a
mm,
lot of the things that we talk about and do are rooted in our behaviors that need to really change in order to become more effective leaders ourselves.
I love that. That was really good. I've never thought about that one. You get the email, you read it, you know you need a pause, send them a note back, let them know you will respond later. That gives you some time. I really like that a lot. Thank you so much for sharing that. So you
And
know what?
empower them and empower them to get back to you, to hold you accountable to that.
Mm,
Right? That's one of the keys to that.
mm. This is powerful. This is powerful. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to do one final thing before we close. Speak to the leader. Like, I know that there are leaders that are listening and watching that resonate with what you have been sharing, what you've been teaching us today. And some of them are saying, okay, I know that I tend to react a lot. I want to change and respond, but they're still in the midst of that tension. Talk to us as leaders. What final encouragement would you give us?
So, a great question, and I go back to very basics. Write a post-it note, or maybe an A4 piece of paper with big letters on it: E plus R equals O. Keep it in your vision or your peripheral vision. Make it a daily reminder that this is the best way to live. Events are going to happen. Respond to this, and you get outcomes you desire. React to them, and it could literally torch your personal brand. Right? It will make you less effective as a leader over time. As they keep that in mind, I would encourage each one of them as they leave their office or if they make decisions, is that perform a self-evaluation. Find out when do you respond and when do you react. When you react, try to understand why you do that. And then put yourself on a path of recovery, right? First, you need to admit that your life has become unmanageable. In other words, you are limiting yourself because you are very reactive by nature. So it's the first admission. Then you're going to try to convert reacting to responding. And you want to measure that on a daily basis and allow yourself 90 to 120 days to get there. And the last thing I will say is this on that, you don't have to do it alone. Go get yourself a coach and a mentor in confidence that nobody needs to see it or hear it. Between two people, you can get all of this accomplished in short order, and you'll become that much more effective as a leader.
Wow. This is awesome. And thank you so much, Walter, for this very real and practical conversation, wisdom, and advisement. So again, I know that there are leaders that they're like, okay, I need more of this, right? Tell us, how can we engage with you when this is over?
So 3 ways of doing that. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. And we can start a dialogue there. I post every day, at least twice a day, little nuggets of information to feed your growth mindset, right? We should never stop learning. So it's one platform. The second thing, as you see on the screen, you can go to thedutchmentor.com and book a free strategy call. Let's just have a conversation, right? I'm a relationship person. I'm not going to try to sell you anything online. It is just having a conversation and see where the gaps and what kind of solutions might be available to you from me or from others. And then the third place is that if you do want to take action, but you cannot afford a coach or a mentor, come January 1st, you can go to the Apple store, the Google store, just look up Smart Performance. It's a new app that's having a mentor in your pocket. It is based on my Pure Leadership Power program. It's an accelerated for any leader to really develop some fundamentals of leadership. S is for self-care, M is for mindful growth, A for adaptive learning, R for rhythmic operation, T for a thriving community, which we all need, and of course, P is around the performance indicators. And that is really the opportunity people have, is that take action. And those are my words of wisdom to everybody. Don't just listen, because by Monday morning you have forgotten everything we had said. It is the actions that you take that will lead you to the pastures you want to graze in.
This has been absolutely amazing. I definitely am going back to watch the replay. And I think it's been so amazing that, Walter, we have to have you back again, because we barely just scratched the surface. So I hope you'll be willing to come back and join us again here in Transformation Leadership Podcast. Thank you. It's been wonderful. We'll see you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you for the invitation. Have a wonderful day. You're doing great work for people.
Thank you. What a powerful and needed conversation. Walter reminded us that responding isn't about being passive, it's about being present. It's about leading with your values instead of your impulses, choosing clarity over chaos. Now, I want to hear from you. Tell me this. Where in your leadership do you want to respond more intentionally instead of reacting instinctively? Go ahead and drop your reflections in the comments, share your insights, DM me, and at the same time, I invite you to reach out to Walter. He is a wealth of resources. You have his website. You saw the link on the screen. His information is also down in the description box. Reach out, tap into the resources, because we know the community that learns together grows together. Again, I remind you, as this episode is resonating with you, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Share this episode with at least 3 leaders in your network who you know need this reminder today. Remember to follow so that you don't miss one conversation. All right. Until next time, stay grounded, Stay aware and keep on transforming with intention.